When 16-year-old Mercy's white step family sold her to a brutal Colorado mining camp to preserve their social standing in 1874, the entire town dismissed her as worthless burden. What they failed to see was a young woman whose mixed heritage had taught her resilience beyond her years. Behind Mercy's quiet demeanor lay someone who had survived systematic poisoning and possessed a sharp intelligence that could expose the corruption rotting Cedar Falls from within. Soon this forgotten girl would become the key to saving not just herself, but an entire struggling family who dared to see her true worth. Blood pooled beneath Jacob Mueller's still body. Mercy Thompson stood over him, the axe handle slick in her trembling hands. 4 children pressed against the cabin wall, their screams cutting through mountain air like winter wind. Sheriff Dawson's fist hammered the door. His voice boomed from outside. "Open up in there." Mercy looked at the children, Anna, Hans, Emil, little Greta with tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry," Mercy whispered. "I'm so sorry." 3 months earlier, autumn had painted Cedar Falls in shades of dying gold. Mercy swept the porch of the boarding house where she lived with Caroline Webb, her stepmother. Each stroke of the broom sent dust swirling into air that tasted of coming snow. She moved slowly. Everything hurt these days. Caroline appeared in the doorway. Her dress was pressed, her hair pinned perfectly despite the early hour. "Mrs. Morrison is hosting tea today." Mercy nodded. She knew what that meant. Another gathering where Caroline would smile and laugh and pretend Mercy didn't exist, where the town's finest ladies would discuss suitable matches for the widow Webb, where Mercy's presence would hang over the conversation like storm clouds. "You'll stay here," Caroline said. "Out of sight." The words hit like physical blows. Mercy had heard them every day since William Webb died 6 weeks ago. Her stepfather's death had changed everything. Without his protection, Caroline faced a choice: keep Mercy and remain unmarried forever, or find a way to become respectable again. Mercy touched her stomach. The cramping had gotten worse this week. Whatever sickness plagued her was spreading through her body like poison in a well. Caroline studied her with cold eyes. "You look terrible." "I feel fine." Liar. Caroline disappeared inside. Mercy finished sweeping and went to the kitchen. She prepared Caroline's breakfast with shaking hands. Eggs, toast, coffee with cream. The same meal every morning for 2 years. The mercury bottle sat on the highest shelf, behind the flour. Caroline thought Mercy couldn't see it there. Thought she was too simple to understand what it meant. But Mercy had watched Caroline add drops to her food for weeks now. Just enough to make her sick. Just enough to make her fade away, like morning mist before sunlight. Mercy ate nothing. She had learned that lesson. The day passed in familiar rhythms. Caroline went to tea. Mercy cleaned the house until her muscles screamed. Evening came too soon. Caroline returned with news. "I've found a solution." Mercy set down her mending. The room felt smaller suddenly. "Mr. Garrett runs the copper mine up north. He needs workers." Mercy's throat closed. Everyone knew about Garrett's mine. Workers went in. Few came out. Those who did spoke of things that made grown men weep. "He'll pay your debt to me," Caroline continued. "Room and board included." "What debt?" Caroline's smile was sharp as winter air. "Food, shelter, clothing, everything since your father died." She pulled out a paper covered in numbers. "Comes to $300. Mercy stared at the figures. Even if they were real, no mine worker could earn enough to pay such a sum. Not in a lifetime. "When?" The word came out broken. "Tomorrow." That night, Mercy lay in her narrow bed and listened to Caroline moving through the house, packing, planning, erasing every trace of the girl who had lived here for 3 years. She thought of William Webb, how he had smiled when he married her mother, how he had promised to protect them both, how he had died before keeping that promise. The mercury had taken her mother first. Now it would take her. Morning arrived gray and bitter. Carolyn loaded Mercy's few belongings into a wagon. The driver was a man with dead eyes and hands like leather. They rode through town in silence. People watched from windows and doorways. Some looked away. Others stared with satisfaction. All of them knew where she was going. At the edge of town, they stopped. Jakob Mueller stood beside his own wagon, studying supplies with careful attention. He was tall and weathered, with hands that spoke of honest work. His clothes were patched but clean. His eyes held something Mercy had forgotten existed. Jakob looked up as Caroline's wagon approached. His gaze moved from the driver to Caroline to Mercy. It lingered on her face. "Mrs. Webb," he nodded, politely. "Mr. Muller?" Caroline's voice carried forced brightness. "Conducting business?" "Winter supplies." Jakob's accent colored the words. "German," Mercy thought. "For my children." His attention returned to Mercy. She saw something shift in his expression. Recognition, perhaps, or memory of his own desperate moments. Caroline climbed down from the wagon. "Perhaps you know Mr. Garrett? He's taking charge of this girl's debts." Jacob's jaw tightened. Everyone knew Garrett's reputation. Everyone understood what happened to people who worked his mines. "She looks ill," Jacob said quietly. "She's fine." Caroline's words came too, fast. "Strong enough for mine work." Jakob stepped closer to the wagon. Mercy met his eyes. In them she saw something impossible. Compassion. "How much does she owe?" Caroline blinked. "Excuse me?" "Her debt. What's the amount?" $300. Caroline's voice carried challenge. "Far too much for—" Jacob pulled a leather pouch from his coat. His winter money, Mercy realized. Everything he had saved to keep his children alive through the cold months. He counted out bills with steady hands. "I'll take responsibility for her debt." Caroline stared at the money. "You can't be serious. Do you want payment or not?" The transaction took minutes. Papers signed, money exchanged. Mercy's fate decided by a stranger's conscience. Jakob helped her down from the wagon. His touch was gentle. Caroline leaned close to him before leaving. "You're bringing poison into your house," she whispered. "Don't say I didn't warn you." The wagon disappeared down the dusty road. Jacob and Mercy stood alone beside his supplies. The mountain wind carried scents of pine and snow, of freedom and fear mixed together. "Thank you," Mercy said. Jacob nodded once. Then he looked at his winter supplies. Food for 4 children, blankets, medicine, all the things that meant survival. In the high country, he had chosen her life over their comfort, maybe over their lives. "We should go," he said simply. They loaded his wagon and began the journey up the mountain road, toward a cabin where 4 children waited for their father's return, where they would learn he had spent their survival on a stranger's freedom. The sun disappeared behind peaks that looked like broken teeth against the sky. At the cabin, smoke rose from the chimney. Light glowed in windows. It looked like home. Jacob stopped the wagon and climbed down. 4 faces appeared in the doorway. Anna, 14 and sharp as winter morning. Hans, 12 and serious. Emil, 10 with his father's steady eyes. Little Greta, 6 and bright as summer flowers. They ran to their father with joy that broke Mercy's heart. Then they saw her. Jacob's voice carried across the clearing. "Children, this is Mercy. She'll be staying with us." Anna's eyes moved from Mercy to the wagon, to the supplies that should have filled every corner, to the empty spaces where their winter security should have been. Understanding dawned like sunrise, cold and revealing. Anna stepped forward. Her young face held knowledge too heavy for her years. "If we die," she said quietly, "it's your fault." The words hung in the mountain air like smoke from a dying fire. Mercy closed her eyes and wondered if she had simply traded one death for another. Mercy's body fought the poison for 3 weeks. The mercury Caroline had fed her burned through, her system like liquid fire. She hid the shaking, the fever, the way her vision blurred when she stood too quickly. The Mueller children watched her with hawk eyes, waiting for weakness, waiting for proof their father had made a fatal mistake, Anna especially. The girl's stare could cut glass. Each morning, Mercy rose before dawn. She fed the fire that kept them all alive, prepared breakfast from stores that dwindled like hope in winter, mended clothes with fingers that trembled but never stopped moving. Jakob worked from sunrise to sunset, chopping wood, hunting game that grew scarcer each day, setting traps that came up empty more often than not. His body grew leaner. His eyes carried weight that bent his shoulders. He had gambled everything on her survival, on her worth. The children made their feelings clear in silence. Hans turned away when she offered him help with chores. Emil wouldn't eat food she had touched. Little Greta hid behind Anna's skirts whenever Mercy entered a room. Only Anna spoke the truth they all carried. "You're killing us slowly." Mercy had no answer. The girl was right. October became November. Snow fell in sheets that turned the world white and merciless. The cabin shrank around them. 5 people sharing space meant for 4. Sharing food meant for a family with winter supplies. Mercy watched Jakob eat smaller portions, watched him give his share to the children when he thought no one was looking, watched him grow hollow-cheeked and gaunt. She began leaving food on her plate, claiming fullness when her stomach gnawed at her ribs, giving back what she could of what he had sacrificed. The children noticed. Anna's hostility flickered, just for moments, just enough to show the girl beneath the survivor. One evening, Mercy found Hans struggling with a book. His face was red, with frustration. The letters might as well have been in Chinese. She sat beside him carefully, like approaching a wounded animal. "May I?" Hans looked toward the kitchen where Jakob was cleaning fish, toward Anna, who was mending by firelight, toward the unspoken rule that Mercy was not family. He pushed the book toward her. The letters were simple, a child's primer, but Hans saw them as enemies to be defeated rather than friends to be welcomed. Mercy opened the book. Her voice was soft as falling snow. "A is for apple. B is for bear." Hans listened. His breathing slowed, his fists unclenched. Soon Emil crept closer, then little Greta. Even Anna paused her sewing to hear the words that transformed marks on paper into meaning. Jakob stood in the doorway. His face was unreadable, but his eyes held something Mercy had seen before. Relief. She was finally proving her worth. The lessons became ritual. Each evening after supper, Mercy would open the book. The children would gather close. Letters became words. Words became sentences. Sentences became stories that carried them beyond the cabin walls. Jakob always listened from the edges, never joining, never interrupting. One night, Mercy noticed him watching too intently, following her finger as it traced across the page, moving his lips silently with words he couldn't form. Understanding hit her like cold water. He couldn't read. The revelation changed everything. This man who had saved her life, who had risked his children's future on a stranger's worth, who carried himself with quiet dignity despite his poverty. He was ashamed of something that meant nothing to her. After the children slept, Mercy found him by the fire. He was cleaning, his rifle with movements that spoke of long practice, of comfort found in familiar tasks. She sat across from him. The flames danced between them like secrets waiting to be shared. "You never learned." Jakob's hand stilled on the gun barrel. The admission hung in the air like smoke. "My father died when I was 8. Work came before schooling." Mercy nodded. She understood fathers who died too soon, mothers who couldn't protect their children, circumstances that stole futures before they could be lived. "I could teach you." The offer surprised them both. Jakob looked up from his rifle. His eyes searched her face for mockery, for pity, for all the things that would make her kindness a cruelty. He found none. The children don't know. They don't need to. Something passed between them, an understanding, built on shared shame, on secrets that bound people together more surely than blood. Why did you leave Germany? Jakob's jaw tightened. The question carried danger, old pain, choices that had consequences across oceans. I helped people escape, Jewish families. The authorities wanted to discuss my activities. The words were careful, measured, but Mercy heard the truth beneath them. This man had saved others before her, had risked everything for strangers who needed shelter. It was who he was, as natural as breathing. That's why you saved me. Perhaps. They sat in comfortable silence. The fire crackled. Wind moaned through the pines. Outside, snow continued to fall. November became December. The lessons continued. The children grew warmer toward her. Not love, not yet, but something approaching tolerance. Anna remained watchful, suspicious. But she no longer spoke of death as Mercy's debt. Then the riders came. Mercy saw them first. 3 men on horseback, black shapes against white snow. They moved with purpose that made her stomach clench. Judge Morrison led them. His face was hard as winter stone. Behind him rode Sheriff Dawson and a man Mercy didn't recognize. Jacob emerged from the woodshed. His axe hung loose in his hands. Not a weapon. Not yet. Gentlemen, Morrison's voice carried authority that brooked no argument. We've come for the girl. Mercy stepped onto the porch. The children appeared behind her like ghosts. What girl? Don't play games, Muller. The one you took from Mrs. Webb. Jacob's grip tightened on the axe handle. She's here legally. I paid her debt. Morrison's smile was sharp as broken glass. With what money? You had funds to buy a person but not winter supplies? The words hit their target. Jacob's poverty was no secret. His desperate gamble had cost his children their security. I have documentation. Forged, most likely. Morrison's eyes found Mercy. This girl is wanted for theft, possibly murder. The world tilted beneath Mercy's feet. Murder. The word echoed in her skull like thunder. That's impossible. William Webb died under suspicious circumstances. His wife has new information. As if summoned by his words, Caroline appeared around the cabin's corner. Her face was pale but determined. Her eyes held satisfaction that made Mercy's skin crawl. She poisoned him, Caroline said. My poor husband. I found evidence in her room. Mercy's throat closed. The truth and lies tangled together, like rope around her neck. Caroline had poisoned William. But who would believe the word of a mixed-blood girl over a respectable white widow? That's not true. We have his deathbed confession, Morrison said, written in his own hand. The paper he produced looked official, legal, damning. Jacob stepped forward. His body was a wall between Mercy and the men who had come to take her. She's under my protection. She's a criminal. Stand aside. The moment stretched like a bowstring pulled taut. 4 children behind her, 3 men in front, Jacob between them all. Anna moved to Mercy's side. Her young face was set with determination that matched her father's. If she goes, we all go. The other children nodded. Even little Greta stepped forward. Morrison's patience cracked. You're harboring a fugitive, Muller. I can have your children removed from this house, placed in more suitable homes. The threat hung in the air like a blade. Jacob's shoulders sagged. The choice was impossible. Save Mercy and lose his children, or sacrifice her to keep his family whole. Anna's hand found Mercy's. The girl's fingers were small but strong. I know what she did to you, Anna whispered. But if we tell, they'll destroy us all. Understanding flowed between them. Caroline's mercury, the slow poisoning, the truth that would condemn them all if spoken. Mercy looked at Jacob, at the children who had finally accepted her, at the family she had found in the wilderness. Then she looked at Caroline's satisfied smile. The decision formed in her heart like ice. Mercy stepped forward. Her voice cut through winter air like a blade. I killed William Webb. The words fell between them like stones into still water. Ripples of shock spread across every face. Jacob's axe slipped in his grip. Anna's hand tightened around hers. Judge Morrison smiled. The expression held no warmth. Finally, some honesty. Caroline's satisfaction flickered. Something almost like panic crossed her features. The confession had come too easily, too willingly. I poisoned his food, Mercy continued, a little each day, until his heart gave out. Sheriff Dawson reached for his shackles. The metal caught sunlight like ice. No need for dramatics, girl, just come quietly. But Anna was staring at Mercy with eyes too old for her face. The girl understood lies told to protect others, had probably told a few herself. Wait, Anna said. Morrison's patience was wearing thin. The child has nothing to add to these proceedings. She has everything to add. Anna pulled something from her coat pocket, a small brown bottle. The label was faded but readable. Mercury. Caroline's face went white as fresh snow. Where did you get that? Caroline's voice cracked like breaking ice. Your sewing basket, Anna said, hidden under the fabric scraps. The bottle passed from hand to hand. Morrison examined the label. Dawson's expression grew troubled. The third man stepped back as if the glass contained something contagious. Caroline's composure shattered. That proves nothing. Anyone could have planted it there. With your initials carved in the cork? Anna's voice carried steel her father would have recognized. C.W. Caroline Webb. The silence stretched like a rope about to snap. Wind moved through the pines. Snow continued to fall. The world waited for truth to surface. Mercy felt the moment, shifting. Caroline's carefully constructed story was crumbling like a wall in an earthquake. She's lying, Caroline said. Her voice rose with desperation. They're all lying to protect her. Morrison studied the bottle. His legal mind was working through implications, evidence, the difference between stories and proof. This changes things. Caroline grabbed his arm. You can't believe them. Look at them, a German immigrant and his bastard children, a mixed-blood girl with murder in her blood. The words hung in the air like poison gas. But they had been spoken too loudly, too desperately. The mask had slipped to reveal something ugly beneath. Jacob's voice was quiet as falling snow. Mrs. Webb, perhaps you should explain why you carry mercury in your sewing kit. Caroline's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Every excuse she formed died before reaching her lips. Sheriff Dawson was looking at her with new eyes, seeing a respectable widow transform into something else entirely. Caroline, he said slowly, what did you do? The question broke her. Years of careful planning, months of slow murder, weeks of building lies. All of it collapsed in a moment of recognition. He was leaving everything to her, Caroline screamed. Everything. The house, the business, the money. All of it to that mongrel child while I got nothing. The confession poured out like water through a broken dam. 20 years I gave him. 20 years of cooking and cleaning and pretending to love him. And he was going to throw me away for her. Morrison stepped back. His political instincts were telling him to distance himself from this woman who had just destroyed both their reputations. So you killed him. A little mercury each day, just enough to weaken his heart. Make it look natural. Caroline's eyes were wild now, desperate. It would have worked if she hadn't gotten suspicious. Mercy stared at the woman who had tried to murder her twice. Once slowly with poison, now quickly with lies. But she didn't die fast enough, Caroline continued. The mercury should have killed her months ago. Instead, she just got stronger, started asking questions. Anna's grip on Mercy's hand was tight enough to break bones. You poisoned both of them. William deserved what he got. Mercy was just supposed to fade away, like morning mist, like she never existed. Sheriff Dawson's face was hard as granite. Caroline Webb, You're under arrest for the murder of William Webb. The shackles that had been meant for Mercy clicked around Caroline's wrists instead. The sound was final as a coffin closing. Morrison was already backing toward his horse. Political survival required abandoning sinking ships quickly. This is a local matter now, Sheriff. Handle it as you see fit. He mounted and rode away without looking back. His reputation might survive if he moved fast enough. Distance himself from the scandal before it spread. Caroline fought against the shackles. This isn't over. You think anyone will accept her? Will accept them? Her voice carried venom that made the mercury seem gentle. She's still what she is. They're still what they are. Dawson pulled her toward his horse. That's enough. But Caroline wasn't finished. You destroyed everything pure in this world, she screamed at Mercy. Everything decent and right. You poisoned it all just by existing. The words echoed across the clearing like gunshots. Then she was gone, dragged away to face justice that had been too long delayed. Silence settled over the Muller family like fresh snowfall. Jacob set down his axe. His hands were shaking. Not from cold. Is it true about the mercury? Mercy nodded. The secret felt strange spoken aloud, like something that had lived in darkness too long. She's been poisoning me for months, since before William died. Anna stepped closer. Her young face was fierce with protective anger. That's why you were so sick. Why you could barely stand some mornings. Understanding flowed between them. All the times Mercy had struggled to work, had hidden weakness behind determination, had fought poison with pure will. Hans kicked at the snow. She tried to kill you twice. 3 times, Emil added quietly. Selling you to the mine was another kind of murder. Little Greta tugged at Mercy's coat. Are you going to die? The question was simple, direct, terrifying in its innocence. Mercy knelt beside the child. Greta's eyes were wide with fear and something else, something that looked like love. Not today. It was the only promise she could make. The mercury was still in her system, still burning through her blood like liquid fire. But it was getting weaker. Her body was fighting back. Jakob placed his hand on her shoulder. The touch was gentle. Careful. We should go inside. The cabin welcomed them like a warm embrace. The fire crackled. Coffee brewed on the stove. Everything was exactly as they had left it. But something fundamental had changed. They were no longer strangers sharing space. No longer a family divided by resentment and survival. They were people who had stood together against lies, who had protected each other when the world tried to tear them apart. Anna sat beside the fire. Her face was thoughtful. She'll never stop hating us. Jakob poured coffee into 5 cups. Even little Greta got a small portion. This was a moment that called for adult rituals. Probably not. The town will take her side. Say we framed her. Some will. Anna sipped her coffee, made a face at the bitterness, but kept drinking. So, what do we do? Jakob looked around the cabin, at his children who had grown up too fast, at Mercy who had survived more than anyone should have to. We survive. We protect each other. We make our own justice. Outside, wind howled through the pines. Snow fell steadily. Winter was closing in with teeth and claws. But inside the cabin, 5 people sat around a fire and planned their future. A future where they stood together against whatever came next. 1 year later, spring had returned to the mountains with gentleness that surprised everyone. Mercy stood in the doorway of her schoolhouse, watching the Mueller children play in the clearing. Anna was 17 now, tall and fierce as mountain, wind. Hans had grown into his father's steady strength. Emil moved with quiet confidence. Little Greta bloomed like wildflowers after rain. The schoolhouse had been Jakob's idea, built with timber from their expanded lumber operation, filled with children the town's proper schools wouldn't accept. Mixed blood kids, immigrant families, anyone whose existence made respectable people uncomfortable. Mercy taught them letters and numbers. Jacob taught them to work with their hands. Together they built something the town couldn't tear down. Caroline Webb sat in territorial prison, serving 20 years for murder. Judge Morrison had fled to California, leaving behind debts and scandals that would follow him like shadows. Their supporters had found new causes to champion. The mercury was finally gone from Mercy's blood. Her hands no longer shook. Her vision stayed clear. Her body had learned to trust food again. She had survived everything they threw at her. The lumber business thrived because Jakob's honesty was rarer than gold in territory where corruption grew like weeds. Families drove hours to buy from the German immigrant who charged fair prices and delivered quality work. Anna kept the books. Her fierce intelligence had found purpose in numbers that told stories of growth and security. She could read contracts now, spot cheats and swindlers before they could damage the family. Hans and Emil worked the timber with their father. Their young muscles grew strong, lifting logs and running saws. They moved through the forest like they belonged there. Greta helped Mercy with the younger children. At 7, she had patience that seemed impossible, but was real as morning sunshine. They had become something Caroline Webb never expected. A family that chose each other, loved each other, protected each other against whatever came. The town had slowly, grudgingly, accepted them. Not because hearts changed overnight, but because success was harder to ignore than prejudice was to maintain. Mercy heard hoofbeats approaching. A single rider on a fine horse. She stepped outside to see who had business at their school. The man who dismounted was well-dressed, expensive coat, good boots, the kind of clothes that spoke of money and position. His skin was dark as her own. His eyes held intelligence and determination. He removed his hat politely. "Miss Thompson?" The name hit her like cold water. Thompson, her mother's name. The name she had carried before William Webb made her his stepdaughter. "I'm Mercy Muller now." The correction was gentle but firm. Names mattered. Identity was choice. "My apologies." The man's smile was warm. "I'm Samuel Thompson. I believe I'm your brother." The world tilted beneath her feet. Brother. Family she had never known existed. "Your father sent me to find you," Samuel continued. "He's been searching since he heard about your mother's death." Father. Another word that carried weight like mountains. He owns shipping companies in San Francisco. Railroad interests in Nevada. He wants to bring you home. Home. The word should have meant something, should have filled empty places in her heart. But Mercy felt only confusion. He never came before. He tried. Your stepfather's lawyers made it clear you were not available for contact. William Webb had kept her from her real family. Even in death, his choices shaped her world. Samuel gestured toward the schoolhouse, toward the children who were watching this conversation with curious eyes. "This is impressive work, but you could have so much more. Education, society, marriage, to someone of your own station." The offer hung in the air like morning mist. A different life, a different future. Everything Caroline Webb had said she could never have. But Mercy was looking at Anna, who stood protective in the schoolhouse doorway, at Hans and Emil, who had stopped their game to listen, at little Greta, whose face showed worry that this stranger might take away someone she loved, at Jakob, who emerged from the forest with sawdust on his clothes and understanding in his eyes. "He's offering you a chance," Jakob said quietly. The words held no judgment, no pressure, just acknowledgement of possibility. Samuel pulled out a photograph. A well-dressed black man standing beside a grand house. Servants in the background. Carriages in the circular drive. Your father, your inheritance, your birthright. Mercy studied the image. The man in the photograph looked successful, happy. He had the kind of life she had never imagined possible for someone like her. But he was a stranger. She looked at the faces around her. Anna's fierce loyalty, Jakob's quiet strength, the children who needed her teaching. the family who had chosen her when choice was dangerous. "I appreciate you coming all this way." Samuel heard the refusal in her voice before she spoke it. "Miss Thompson." "Muller," she corrected again. "You don't understand what you're giving up." "I understand exactly what I'm giving up." Mercy walked to the schoolhouse door. Her hand rested on the frame Jakob had built with his own hands, wood that would last generations. Some families you're born into, others you choose, but the ones worth keeping are the ones you choose to save. Samuel mounted his horse. His expression was sad, but not surprised. "If you change your mind, I won't." He rode away down the mountain path. The sound of hooves faded until only wind through the pines remained. The Muller children gathered around her. Anna took her left hand, Hans her right. Emil and Greta pressed close. Jakob stood behind them all, solid as the mountains themselves. They watched the dust settle where Samuel Thompson had disappeared. They watched the sun sink behind peaks that looked like home. They watched their future unfold in the clearing where they had chosen each other over blood, over respectability, over everything the world said should matter more than love. Mercy never opened that door again. And that is all to the story, for now. Please let me know where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will create a story there. Consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel. And if you enjoy our content, click this video on your screen. I promise you, it's worth watching. See you tomorrow.